You just typed it. I am sorry. I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to. She pressed her lips together, flustered. Then she noticed that the corners of his eyes were crinkling. Damn you. She pinched him lightly on the underside of his arm. He yelped and smiled wider, which made her wonder what he would do if she retaliated by writing her name with sunscreen on his chest. Just enough for him to only get a tan around it. She tried to imagine his face after taking off his t-shirt, finding the 5 letters printed on his flesh in the reflection of his bathroom mirror. The expression he'd make. Whether he'd touch them with his fingertips. Crazy, she told herself. This whole thing, it's driving you crazy. So he's handsome, and you find him attractive. Big deal. Who cares? She wiped her mostly lotion-free hands down the columns of his biceps and took a step back. You're good to go, Dr. Antagonistic. He smelled of fresh sweat, himself, and coconut. Olive wasn't going to get to talk with him again until Wednesday, and why the thought came with an odd pang in her chest, she had no clue. Thanks. And think on, I guess. What do you think she'll have us do next time? He shrugged. Hold hands. Feed each other strawberries? Good one. Maybe she'll up her game. Fake wedding. Fake buy a house together. Fake sign the mortgage paperwork. Olive laughed, and the way he looked at her, kind and curious and patient, she must be hallucinating it. Her head was not right. She should have brought a sun hat. Hey, Olive. She tore her gaze from Adam's and noticed Tom approaching. He, too, was shirtless and clearly fit and had a large number of abs that were defined enough to be easily counted. And yet, for some reason, it did absolutely nothing for Olive. Hi, Tom. She smiled, even though she was a little irritated by the interruption. Loved your talk the other day. It was good, wasn't it? Did Adam tell you about our change of plans? She tilted her head. Change of plans. We've been making great progress on the grants, so we're going to Boston next week to finish setting up stuff on the Harvard side. Oh, that's great. She turned to Adam. How long will you be gone? Just a few days. His tone was quiet. Olive felt relief that it wasn't going to be longer. For indiscernible reasons. Would you be able to send me your report by Saturday, Olive? Tom asked. Then I'll have the weekend to look it over, and we'll discuss it while I'm still here. Her brain exploded in a flurry of panic and bright red alert signs, but she managed to keep her smile in place. Yeah, of course. I'll send it to you on Saturday. Oh God. Oh God. She was going to have to work around the clock. She wasn't going to get any sleep this week. She was going to have to bring her laptop to the toilet and write while she peed. No problem at all, she added, leaning even harder into her lie. Perfect. Tom winked at her, or maybe just squinted in the sun. You going back to play? He asked Adam, and when Adam nodded, Tom spun around and headed back into the game. Adam hesitated for just a second longer, then he nodded at Olive and left. She tried hard not to stare at his back as he rejoined his team, which seemed to be overjoyed to have him again. Clearly, sports were another thing Adam Carlson excelled at, unfairly so. She didn't even have to check to know that On and Jeremy and pretty much everyone else had been staring at them for the past 5 minutes. She fished a seltzer can out of the nearest cooler, reminding herself that this was exactly what they wanted from this arrangement, and then found a spot under an oak tree next to her friends. All this sunscreen fuss, and now they were sitting in the shade. Go figure. She wasn't even that hungry anymore, a small miracle courtesy of having to apply sunscreen to her fake boyfriend very publicly. So, what's he like? On asked. She was lying down with her head on Jeremy's lap. Above her, Malcolm was staring at the Frisbee players, probably swooning over how pretty Holden Rodriguez looked in the sun. Carlson. Oh, actually, On smirked. I meant to say Adam. You call him Adam, right? Or do you prefer Dr. Carlson? If you guys role-play with schoolgirl uniforms and rulers, I totally want to hear about it. On. Yeah. How is Carlson? Jeremy asked. I'm assuming he's different with you than with us. Or does he also tell you repeatedly that the font for the labels of your X and Y-axis is irritatingly small? Olive smiled into her knees because she could totally imagine Adam saying that. Could almost hear his voice in her head. No. Not yet, at least. What's he like then? She opened her mouth to answer, thinking it would be easy. Of course, it was everything but. He's just, you know. We don't, On said. There must be more to him than meets the eye. He's so moody and negative and angry, and… He's not, Olive interrupted, and then regretted it a little, because it wasn't entirely true. He can be, but he cannot be, too. If you say so. On seemed unconvinced. How did you even start dating? You never told me. Oh. Olive looked away and let her gaze wander. Adam must have just done something noteworthy, because he and Dr. Rodriguez were exchanging a high five. She noticed Tom staring at her from the field and waved at him with a smile. We just talked, and then got coffee, and then… How does that even happen? Jeremy interrupted, clearly skeptical. How does one decide to say yes to a date with Carlson? Before seeing him half-naked, anyway. You kiss him. You kiss him, and then, next thing you know, he's saving your ass, and he's buying you scones and calling you a smart ass in a weirdly affectionate tone, and even when he's being his moody asshole self, he doesn't seem to be that bad. Or bad at all. And then you tell him to fuck off over the phone, and possibly ruin everything. He just asked me out, and I said yes. Though it was obviously a lie. Someone with a Lancet publication and back muscles that defined would never ask someone like Olive out. So, you didn't meet on Tinder? What? No. Because that's what people are saying. I'm not on Tinder. Is Carlson? No. Maybe. Yes. Olive massaged her temples. Who's saying that we met on Tinder? Actually, rumors that they met on Craigslist, Malcolm said distractedly, waving at someone. She followed his gaze and noticed that he was staring at Holden Rodriguez, who appeared to be smiling and waving back. Olive frowned. Then she parsed what Malcolm had just said. Craigslist. Malcolm shrugged. Not saying that I believed it. Who are people? And why are they even talking about us? On reached up to pat Olive on the shoulder. Don't worry, the gossip about you and Carlson died down after Dr. Moss and Sloane had that very public argument about people disposing of blood samples in the ladies' restroom. Well, for the most part. Hey. She sat up and wrapped an arm around Olive, pulling her in for an embrace. She smelled like coconut. Stupid sunscreen. Chill. I know some people have been weird about this, but Jeremy and Malcolm and I are just happy for you, OL. On smiled at her reassuringly, and Olive felt herself relax. Mostly that you're finally getting laid. Chapter 8. Hypothesis. On a Likert scale ranging from 1 to 10, Jeremy's timing will be -50, with a standard error of the mean of 0.2. Number 37, salt and vinegar potato chips, was sold out. It was frankly inexplicable. Olive had come in at 8 p.m., and there had been at least one bag left in the break room's vending machine. She distinctly remembered patting the back pocket of her jeans for quarters, and the feeling of triumph at finding exactly 4. She recalled looking forward to that moment, approximately 2 hours later, by which time she estimated that she'd have completed exactly a third of her work, and would thus be able to reward herself with the indisputable best among the snacks that the 4th floor had to offer. Except that the moment had come, and there were no chips left, which was a problem, because Olive had already inserted her precious quarters inside the coin slot, and she was very hungry. She selected number 24, Twix, which was okay, though not her favorite by a long shot, and listened to its dull, disappointing thud as it fell to the bottom shelf. Then she bent to pick it up, staring wistfully at the way the gold wrapper shined in her palm. "I wish you were salt and vinegar chips," she whispered at it, a trace of resentment in her voice. "Here." "Ah." She startled and instantly turned around, hands in front of her body and ready to defend, possibly even to attack. But the only person in the break room was Adam, sitting on one of the small couches in the middle, looking at her with a bland, slightly amused expression. She relaxed her pose and clutched her hands to her chest, willing her racing heartbeat to slow down. "When did you get here? 5 minutes ago?" He regarded her calmly. "I was here when you came in. Why didn't you say something?" He tilted his head. "I could ask the same." She covered her mouth with her hand, trying to recover from the scare. "I didn't see you. Why are you sitting in the dark, like a creep?" "Lights broken." "As usual." Adam lifted his drink, a bottle of Coke that hilariously read Serafina, and Olive remembered Jess, one of his grads, complaining about how strict Adam was about bringing food and drinks into his lab. He grabbed something from the cushion and held it out to Olive. "Here. You can have the rest of the chips." Olive narrowed her eyes. "You." "Me? You stole my chips." His mouth curved. "Sorry." "You can have what's left." He peeked into the bag. "I didn't have many, I don't think." She hesitated and then made her way to the couch. She distrustfully accepted the small bag and took a seat next to him. "Thanks, I guess." He nodded, taking a sip of his drink. She tried not to stare at his throat as he tipped his head back, averting her eyes to her knees. "Should you be having caffeine at—" Olive glanced at the clock. 10:27 p.m.? Come to think of it, he shouldn't be having caffeine at all, given his baseline shiny personality. And yet the two of them got coffee together every Wednesday. Olive was nothing but an enabler. "I doubt I'll be sleeping much anyway." "Why?" "I need to run a set of last-minute analyses for a grant due on Sunday night." "Oh." She leaned back, finding a more comfortable position. "I thought you had minions for that. As it turns out, asking your grads to pull an all-nighter for you is frowned upon by HR. What a travesty. Truly. What about you?" "Tom's report." She sighed. "I'm supposed to send it to him tomorrow, and there's a section that I just don't." She sighed again. "I'm rerunning a few analyses, just to make sure that everything is perfect, but the equipment I'm working with is not exactly. Ugh." "Have you told Icicle?" "Icicle," he'd said. Naturally. Because Adam was a colleague of Dr. Aslan, not her grad, and it made sense that he'd think of her as Icicle. It wasn't the first time he'd called her that. It wasn't even the first time Olive had noticed. It was just hard to reconcile when they were sitting alone and talking quietly that Adam was faculty and Olive was very much not. Worlds apart, really. "I did, but there's no money to get anything better. She's a great mentor, but last year her husband got sick and she decided to retire early, and sometimes it feels like she stopped caring." Olive rubbed her temple. She could feel a headache coming up and had a long night ahead of her. "Are you going to tell her I told you that?" "Of course." She groaned. "Don't. Might also tell her about the kisses you've been extorting, and the fake dating scheme you roped me into, and above all about the sunscreen." "Oh God." Olive hid her face in her knees, arms coming up to wrap around her head. "God. The sunscreen." "Yeah." His voice sounded muffled from down here. "Yeah, that was awkward," she offered, sitting back straight with a grimace. Adam was looking elsewhere. She was probably imagining it, the way he was flushing. He cleared his throat. "Among other things." Yep. It had been other things, too. A lot of things that she was not going to mention because her other things were sure to not be his other things. His other things were probably terrible and harrowing and invasive. while hers is the sunscreen going in the Title IX complaint. His mouth twitched. Right on the first page. Non-consensual sunblock application. Oh, come on. I saved you from basal cell carcinoma. Groped under SPF pretense. She swatted him with her Twix, and he ducked a bit to avoid her, amused. Hey, you want half of this? Since I fully plan to eat what's left of your chips. Nah. You sure? Can't stand chocolate. Olive stared at him, shaking her head in disbelief. You would, wouldn't you? Hate everything that is delicious and lovely and comforting. Chocolate's disgusting. You just want to live in your dark, bitter world made of black coffee and plain bagels with plain cream cheese. And occasionally sultan vinegar chips. They are clearly your favorite chips. Not the point. And I am flattered that you've memorized my orders. It does help that they're always the same. At least I've never ordered something called a unicorn frappuccino. That was so good. It tasted like the rainbow. Like sugar and food coloring? My two favorite things in the universe. Thank you for buying it for me, by the way. It had made for a nice fake dating Wednesday treat this week, even though Olive had been so busy with Tom's report that she hadn't been able to exchange more than a couple of words with Adam, which she had to admit had been a little disappointing. Where's Tom, by the way, while you and I slave our Friday night away?
Out.
On a date, I think. On a date? Does his girlfriend live here? Tom has lots of girlfriends. In lots of places. But are any of them fake? She beamed at him, and could tell that he was tempted to smile back. Would you like $50 then? For the chips. Keep it.
Great.
Because it's about a third of my monthly salary. She actually managed to make him laugh, and it didn't just transform his face, it changed the entire space they were inhabiting. Olive had to convince her lungs not to stop working, to keep taking in oxygen, and her eyes not to get lost in the little lines at the corners of his eyes, the dimples in the center of his cheeks. Glad to hear that grad student stipends have not increased since I was one. Did you used to live on instant ramen and bananas during your PhD, too? I don't like bananas, but I remember having lots of apples. Apples are expensive, you fiscally irresponsible splurger. She tilted her head and wondered if it was okay to ask the one thing she'd been dying to know. She told herself that it was probably inappropriate, and then went for it anyway. How old are you? 34.
Oh, wow.
She'd thought younger. Or older, maybe. She'd thought he existed in an ageless dimension. It was so weird to hear a number. To have a year of birth, almost a whole decade before hers. I'm 26. Olive wasn't sure why she offered up the information, since he hadn't asked. It's odd to think that you used to be a student, too. Is it?
Yep.
Were you like this as an undergrad, too? Like this? You know. She batted her eyes at him, antagonistic and unapproachable. He glared, but she was starting to not take that too seriously. I might have been worse, actually. I bet. There was a brief, comfortable silence as she sat back and began to tackle her bag of chips. It was all she'd ever wanted from a vending machine snack. So, does it get better? What? This. She gestured inchoately around herself. Academia. Does it get better after grad school? Once you have tenure?
No.
God, no. He looked so horrified by the assumption, she had to laugh. Why do you stick around then? Unclear. There was a flash of something in his eyes that Olive couldn't quite interpret, but nothing surprising about that. There was a lot about Adam Carlson she didn't know. He was an ass, but with unexpected depths. There's an element of sunk cost fallacy, probably, hard to step away when you've invested so much time and energy. But the science makes it worth it. When it works, anyway. She hummed, considering his words, and remembered the guy in the bathroom. He'd said that academia was a lot of bucks for little Bang, and that one needed a good reason to stick around. Olive wondered where he was now. If he'd managed to graduate. If he knew that he'd helped someone make one of the hardest decisions of their life. If he had any idea that there was a girl, somewhere in the world, who thought about their random encounter surprisingly often. Doubtful. I know grad school is supposed to be miserable for everyone, but it's depressing to see tenured faculty here on a Friday night, instead of, I don't know, watching Netflix in bed or getting dinner with their girlfriend. I thought you were my girlfriend. Olive smiled up at him. Not quite. But since we're on the topic, why exactly don't you have one? Because it's getting harder and harder for me to figure that one out. Except that maybe you just don't want one. Maybe you just want to be on your own, like everything about your behavior suggests, and here I am, annoying the shit out of you. I should just pocket my chips and my candy and go back to my stupid protein samples, but for some reason you are so comfortable to be around. And I am drawn to you, even though I don't know why. Do you plan to stay in academia? He asked. After you graduate.
Yes.
Maybe.
No.
He smiled and Olive laughed. Undecided. Right. It's just, there are things that I love about it. Being in the lab, doing research, coming up with study ideas, feeling that I'm doing something meaningful. But if I go the academic route, then I'll also need to do a lot of other things that I just... She shook her head. Other things?
Yeah.
The PR stuff, mostly. Write grants and convince people to fund my research. Network, which is a special kind of hell. Public speaking, or even one-on-one situations where I have to impress people. That's the worst, actually. I hate it so much. My head explodes and I freeze and everyone is looking at me ready to judge me and my tongue paralyzes and I start wishing that I was dead and then that the world was dead and... She noticed to smile and gave him a rueful look. You get the gist. There are things you can do about that if you want. It just takes practice. Making sure your thoughts are organized. Stuff like that. I know. And I try to do that. I did it before my meeting with Tom. And I still stammered like an idiot when he asked me a simple question. And then you helped me, ordered my thoughts, and saved my ass without even meaning to. I don't know. Maybe my brain is broken. He shook his head. You did great during that meeting with Tom, especially considering that you were forced to have your fake boyfriend sit next to you. She didn't point out that his presence had actually made things better. Tom certainly seemed impressed, which is no small feat, and if anyone screwed up, it was definitely him. I'm sorry he did that, by the way. Did what? Force you to talk about your personal life.
Oh.
Olive looked away, toward the blue glow of the vending machine. It's okay. It's been a while. She was surprised to hear herself continue. To feel herself wanting to continue. Since high school, really. That's young. There was something about his tone, maybe the evenness, maybe the lack of overt sympathy, that she found reassuring. I was 15. One day my mom and I were there just, I don't even know, kayaking, thinking about getting a cat, arguing over the way I'd pile stuff on top of the trash can when it was overflowing and I didn't want to take it out. And next thing I knew she had her diagnosis, and 3 weeks later she'd already. She couldn't say it. Her lips, her vocal folds, her heart, they just wouldn't form the words. So she swallowed them. The child welfare system couldn't figure out where to send me until I became of age. Your dad. She shook her head. Never in the picture. He's an asshole, according to my mom. She laughed softly. The never takes out the trash gene clearly came from his side of the family. And my grandparents had died when I was a kid. Because apparently that's what people around me do. She tried to say it jokingly. She really tried. To not sound bitter. She thought she even succeeded. I was just alone. What did you do? Foster home until 16, then I emancipated. She shrugged, hoping to brush off the memory. If only they'd caught it earlier, even just by a few months. Maybe she'd be here. Maybe surgery and chemo would have actually done something. And I was always good at science stuff, so I thought that the least I could do was… Adam dug into his pockets for a few moments and held out a crumpled paper napkin. Olive stared at it, confused, until she realized that her cheeks had somehow grown wet.
Oh.
Adam, did you just offer me a used tissue? Maybe. He pressed his lips together. I panicked. She chuckled wetly, accepting his gross tissue and using it to blow her nose. They'd kissed twice, after all. Why not share a bit of snot? I'm sorry. I'm usually not like this. Like what?
Weepy.
I shouldn't talk about this.
Why?
Because it was hard to explain, the mix of pain and affection that always resurfaced when she talked about her mother. It was the reason she almost never did it and the reason she hated cancer so much. Not only had it robbed her of the person she loved the most, but it had also turned the happiest memories of her life into something bittersweet. It makes me weepy. He smiled. Olive, you can talk about it. And you should let yourself be weepy. She had a sense that he really meant it, that she could have talked about her mom for however long she liked, and he would have listened intently to every second of it. She wasn't sure she was ready for it, though. So she shrugged, changing the topic. Anyway, now here I am, loving lab work and barely dealing with the rest, abstracts, conferences, networking, teaching, rejected grants. Olive gestured in Adam's direction. Failed dissertation proposals. Is your lab mate still giving you a hard time? Olive waved her hand dismissively. I'm not his favorite person, but it's fine. He'll get over it. She bit into her lip. I'm sorry about the other night. I was rude. You have every right to be mad. Adam shook his head. It's okay. I understand where you were coming from. I do get what you're saying about not wanting to form a new generation of crappy millennial scientists. I don't believe I've ever used the expression crappy millennial scientists. But FYI, I still think that you don't need to be that harsh when you give feedback. We get the gist of what you're saying, even if you give criticism more nicely. He looked at her for a long time. Then he nodded once. Noted. Are you going to be less harsh then? Unlikely. She sighed. You know, when I have no more friends and everyone hates me because of this fake dating thing, I'll be super lonely, and you're going to have to hang out with me every day. I'll annoy you all the time. Is it really worth being mean to every grad in the program? Absolutely. She sighed again, this time with a smile, and let the side of her head rest on his shoulder. It might have been a bit forward, but it felt natural. Maybe because they seemed to have a knack for getting themselves in situations that required PDA of some sort. Maybe because of everything they'd been talking about. Maybe because of the hour of the night. Adam. Well, he didn't act as if he minded. He was just there, quiet, relaxed, warm and solid through the cotton of his black shirt under her temple. It felt like a long time before he broke the silence. I'm not sorry for asking Greg to revise his proposal, but I am sorry that I created a situation that led him to take it out on you. That as long as this continues, it might happen again. Well, I am sorry about the texts I sent, she said again. And you're fine, even if you're antagonistic and unapproachable. Good to hear. I should go back to the lab. She sat up, one hand coming to massage the base of her neck. My disastrous blotting is not going to fix itself. Adam blinked, and there was a gleam in his eyes, as if he hadn't thought she'd leave so soon. As if he'd have liked for her to stay. Why disastrous?
She groaned.
It's just… She reached for her phone and tapped on the home button, pulling up a picture of her last Western blot. See? She pointed at the target protein. This, it shouldn't. He nodded, thoughtful. You're sure the starting sample was good? And the gel? Yep, not runny or dried out. It looks like the antibody might be the problem. She looked up at him. You think so?
Yep.
I'd check the dilution and the buffer. If not that, it might also be a wonky secondary antibody. Come by my lab if it still doesn't work. You can borrow ours. Same for other pieces of equipment or supplies. If there's anything you need, just ask my lab manager.
Oh, wow.
Thank you. She smiled. Now I'm actually a bit sorry that I can't have you on my dissertation committee. Perhaps rumors of your cruelty have been greatly exaggerated. His mouth twitched. Maybe you just pull out the best in me? She grinned. Then maybe I should stick around. Just, to save the department from your terrible moods. He glanced at the picture of the failed Western blot in her hand. Well, it doesn't look like you're going to graduate anytime soon. She half laughed, half gasped. Oh my God, did you just? Objectively, this is the rudest, meanest thing, she was laughing, holding her stomach as she waved her finger at him. Based on your blotting, that anyone could ever say to a PhD student. Ever. I think I can find meaner things, if I really put myself to it. We're done. She wished she weren't smiling. Then maybe he'd take her seriously instead of just looking at her with that patient, amused expression. Seriously, it was nice while it lasted. She made to stand and leave indignantly, but he grabbed the sleeve of her shirt and gently tugged at it until she was sitting down again, next to him on the narrow couch, maybe even a little closer than before. She continued glaring, but he regarded her blandly, clearly unperturbed. There's nothing bad about taking more than 5 years to graduate, he offered in a conciliatory tone. Olive huffed. You just want me to stay around forever. Until you have the biggest, fattest, strongest Title IX case to ever exist. That was my plan all along, in fact. The one and only reason I kissed you out of the blue. Oh, shut up. She ducked her chin into her chest, biting into her lip and hoping he wouldn't notice her grinning like the idiot she was. Hey, can I ask you something? Adam looked at her expectantly, like he seemed to a lot lately, so she continued, her tone softer and quieter. Why are you really doing this? Doing what? The fake dating. I understand that you want to look like you're not a flight risk, but why aren't you really dating someone?
I mean, you're not that bad.
High praise. No, come on. What I meant was, based on your fake dating behavior, I'm sure that a lot of women, well, some women would love to real date you. She bit into her lip again, playing with the hole that was opening up on the knee of her jeans. We're friends. We weren't when we started, but we are now. You can tell me. Are we? She nodded.
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Come on.
Well, you did just break one of the sacred tenets of academic friendships by mentioning my graduation timeline. But I'll forgive you if you tell me if this is really better for you than, getting a real girlfriend. It is. Really? Yes. He seemed honest.
He was honest.
Adam was not a liar. Olive would bet her life on it. Why, though? Do you enjoy the sunscreen-mediated fondling? And the opportunity to donate hundreds of your dollars to the campus Starbucks? He smiled faintly, and then he wasn't smiling anymore. Not looking at her, either, but somewhere in the direction of the crumpled plastic wrapper that she tossed on the table a few minutes ago. He swallowed. She could see his jaw work. Olive. He took a deep breath. You should know that. Oh my God. They both startled, Olive considerably more so than Adam, and turned toward the entrance. Jeremy stood there, one hand dramatically clutching his sternum. You guys scared the shit out of me. What are you doing sitting in the dark? What are you doing here? Olive thought ungraciously. Just chatting, she said, though it didn't seem like a good descriptor of what was going on. And yet, she couldn't put her finger on why. You scared me, Jeremy repeated once more. Are you working on your report, OL?
Yeah.
She stole a quick glance at Adam, who was motionless and expressionless next to her. Just taking a quick break. I was about to go back, actually. Oh, cool. Me too. Jeremy smiled, pointing in the direction of his lab. I need to go isolate a bunch of virgin fruit flies. Before they're not virgins anymore, you know? He wiggled his eyebrows, and Olive had to force out a small, unconvincing laugh. She usually enjoyed his sense of humor. Usually. Now, she just wished. She wasn't sure what she wished. You coming with, OL? No, I'm fine right here, actually.
Sure.
Reluctantly, she stood. Adam did the same, gathering their wrappers and his empty bottle and sorting them in the recycling bins. Have a good night, Dr. Carlson, Jeremy said from the entrance. Adam just nodded at him, a touch curtly. The set of his eyes was yet again impossible to decipher. I guess that's it, then, she thought. Where the weight in her chest had come from, she had no clue. She was probably just tired. Had eaten too much or not enough. See you, Adam. Right? She murmured before he could head for the entrance and leave the room. Her voice was pitched low enough that Jeremy couldn't possibly have heard her. Maybe Adam hadn't, either. Except that he paused for a moment. And then, when he walked past her, she had the impression of knuckles brushing against the back of her hand. Good night, Olive. Chapter 9. Hypothesis. The more I mention an attachment in an email, the less likely I will be to actually include said attachment. Saturday, 6:34 p.m. from Olive-Smith at Stanford. EDU 2. Tom-Benton at Harvard. EDU subject. Report on pancreatic cancer study. Hi, Tom. Here is the report you asked for, with a detailed description of what I have done so far, as well as my thoughts on future directions and the resources I will need to expand. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on my work. Sincerely, Olive. Saturday, 6:35 p.m. from Olive-Smith at Stanford. EDU 2. Tom-Benton at Harvard. EDU subject. Report on pancreatic cancer study. Hi, Tom. Oops, forgot the attachment. Sincerely, Olive. Today, 3:20 p.m. from Tom-Benton at Harvard. EDU 2. Olive-Smith at Stanford. EDU subject. Report on pancreatic cancer study. Olive, done reading the report. Do you think you could come over to Adam's to chat about it? Maybe tomorrow morning, Tuesday at 9? Adam and I will be leaving for Boston on wed afternoon.
TB.
Olive's heart beat faster. Whether at the idea of being in Adam's home or at the thought of getting her answer from Tom, she wasn't sure. She immediately texted Adam. Olive, Tom just invited me to your place to talk about the report. I sent him. Would it be okay if I came over? Adam. Of course. When? Olive. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. Will you be home? Adam. Probably. There are no bike lanes to my house.
Do you
need a ride? I can pick you up. She thought about it for a few moments and decided that she liked the idea a little too much. Olive. My roommate can drive me, but thanks for offering. Malcolm dropped her off in front of a beautiful Spanish colonial house with stucco walls and arched windows and refused to back out of the driveway until Olive agreed to slide a can of pepper spray in her backpack. She walked over the brick tile path and up to the entrance, marveling at the green of the yard and at the cozy atmosphere of the porch. She was about to ring the doorbell when she heard her name. Adam was behind her, bathed in sweat and clearly just back from his morning run. He was wearing sunglasses, shorts, and a Princeton undergrad mathletes t-shirt that stuck to his chest. Out of the ensemble, the only non-lack items were the AirPods in his ears, peeking through the damp waves of his hair. She felt her cheeks curve into a smile, trying to imagine what he was listening to. Probably Coil or Kraftwerk. The Velvet Underground. A TED Talk on water-efficient landscaping. Whale noises. She would have given a huge chunk of her salary in exchange for 5 minutes alone with his phone, just to mess with his playlist. Add Taylor Swift, Beyoncé, maybe some Ariana. Broaden his horizons. She couldn't see his eyes behind the dark lenses, but she didn't need to. His mouth had curved as soon as he'd noticed her, his smile slight but definitely there. "You okay?" he asked. Olive realized that she'd been staring.
Yeah. Sorry.
"You?" He nodded. "Did you find the house all right?"
Yes.
"I was just about to knock." "No need." He passed her and opened the door for her, waiting until she'd stepped inside to close it after them. She caught a whiff of his scent, sweat and soap and something dark and good, and wondered anew at how familiar it had become to her. Tom's probably this way. Adam's place was light, spacious, and simply furnished. "No taxidermied animals?" she asked under her breath. He was clearly about to flip her off. When they found Tom in the kitchen, typing on his laptop, he looked up at her and grinned, which, she hoped, was a good sign. "Thanks for coming, Olive. I wasn't sure I'd have time to go to campus before leaving. Sit down, please." Adam disappeared from the room, probably to go shower, and Olive felt her heart pick up. Tom had made his decision. Her destiny was going to be defined by the next few minutes. "Can you clarify a couple of things for me?" he asked, turning his laptop toward her and pointing at one of the figures she'd sent. "To make sure I understand your protocols correctly." When Adam came back 20 minutes later, hair damp and wearing one of his 10 million black Henleys that were all a tiny bit different and yet still managed to fit him in the most irritatingly perfect way, she was just wrapping up an explanation of her RNA analyses. Tom was taking notes on his laptop. "Whenever you guys are done, I can give you a ride back to campus, Olive," Adam offered. "I need to drive in anyway." "We're done," Tom said, still typing. "She's all yours."
Oh.
Olive nodded and gingerly stood up. Tom hadn't given her an answer yet. He'd asked lots of interesting, smart questions about her project, but he hadn't told her whether he wanted to work with her next year. Did it mean that the answer was a no, but he'd rather not communicate it to Olive in her boyfriend's home? What if he'd never really thought that her work was worth funding? What if he'd just been faking it because Adam was his friend? Adam had said that Tom wasn't like that, but what if he'd been wrong and now? "You ready to go?" Adam asked. She grabbed her backpack, trying to collect herself. She was fine. This was fine. She could cry about this later.
Sure.
She rocked once on her heels, giving Tom one last look. Sadly, he seemed taken with his laptop.
Bye, Tom.
"It was nice to meet you. Have a safe trip home." "Likewise," he said, not even glancing at her. "I had lots of interesting conversations." Yeah. It must have been the section on genome-based prognostics, she thought, following Adam out of the room. She'd suspected it was too weak, but she'd been stupid and she'd sent the report anyway. Stupid, stupid, stupid. She should have beefed it up. The most important thing now was to avoid crying until she was... "And Olive," Tom added. She paused under the doorframe and looked back at him. "Yes. I'll see you next year at Harvard, right?" His gaze finally slid up to meet hers. "I have the perfect bench set aside for you." Her heart detonated. It absolutely exploded with joy in her chest, and Olive felt a violent wave of happiness, pride, and relief all wash over her. It could have easily knocked her to the floor, but by some miracle of biology, she managed to stay upright and smile at Tom. "I can't wait," she said, voice thick with happy tears. Thank you so much. He gave her a wink and one last smile, kind and encouraging. Olive barely managed to wait until she was outside to fist pump, then jump around a few times, then fist pump again. You all done? Adam asked. She turned around, remembering that she wasn't alone. His arms were folded on his chest, fingers drumming against his biceps. There was an indulgent expression in his eyes, and she should have been embarrassed, but she just couldn't help it. Olive threw herself at him and hugged his torso as tight as she could. She closed her eyes when, after a few seconds of hesitation, he wrapped his arms around her. Congratulations, he whispered softly against her hair. Just like that, Olive was on the verge of tears all over again. Once they were in Adam's car, a Prius, to exactly no one's surprise, and driving to campus, she felt so happy she couldn't possibly be quiet. He'll take me. He said he'll take me. He'd be an idiot not to. Adam was smiling softly. I knew he would. Had he told you? Her eyes widened. You knew, and you didn't even tell me. He hadn't. We haven't discussed you. Oh. She tilted her head, turning around in the car seat to better look at him. Why? Unspoken agreement. It might be a conflict of interest. Right.
Sure.
It made sense. Close friend and girlfriend. Fake girlfriend, actually. Can I ask you something? She nodded. There are lots of cancer labs in the US. Why did you choose Tom's? Well, I sort of didn't. I emailed several people, 2 of whom are at UCSF, which is much closer than Boston. But Tom was the only one who answered. She leaned her head against the seat. It occurred to her for the first time that she was going to have to leave her life for an entire year. Her apartment with Malcolm, her nights spent with Adam even. She immediately pushed the thought away, not ready to entertain it. Why do professors never answer students' emails, by the way? Because we get approximately 200 a day, and most of them are iterations of, why do I have a C-? He was quiet for a moment. My advice for the future is to have your advisor reach out, instead of doing it yourself. She nodded and stored away the information. I'm glad Harvard worked out, though. It's going to be amazing. Tom is such a big name, and the amount of work I can do in his lab is limitless. I'll be running studies 24/7, and if the results are what I think they'll be, I'll be able to publish in high-impact journals and probably get a clinical trial started in just a few years. She felt high on the prospect. Hey, you and I now have a collaborator in common, on top of being excellent fake dating partners. A thought occurred to her. What is your and Tom's big grant about anyway? Cell-based models. Off lattice. He nodded.
Wow.
That's cool stuff. It's the most interesting project I'm working on for sure. Got the grant at the right moment, too. What do you mean? He was silent for a beat while he switched lanes. It's different from my other grants, mostly genetic stuff. Which is interesting, don't get me wrong, but after 10 years researching the same exact thing, I was in a rut. You mean bored?
To death.
I briefly considered going into industry. Olive gasped. Switching from academia to industry was considered the ultimate betrayal. Don't worry. Adam smiled. Tom saved the day. When I told him I wasn't enjoying research anymore, we brainstormed some new directions, found something we were both enthusiastic about, and wrote the grant. Olive felt a sudden surge of gratitude toward Tom. Not only was he going to rescue her project, but he was the reason Adam was still around. The reason she'd gotten the opportunity to know him. It must be nice to be excited about work again. It is. Academia takes a lot from you and gives back very little. It's hard to stick around without a good reason to do so. She nodded absent-mindedly, thinking that the words sounded familiar. Not just the content, but the delivery, too. Not surprising, though. It was exactly what the guy in the bathroom had told her all those years ago. Academia's a lot of bucks for very little bang. What matters is whether your reason to be in academia is good enough. Suddenly, something clicked in her brain. The deep voice, the blurry dark hair, the crisp, precise way of talking. Could the guy in the bathroom and Adam be?
No.
Impossible. The guy was a student, though. Had he explicitly said so?
No.
No. What he'd said was this is my lab's bathroom and that he'd been there for 6 years, and he hadn't answered when she'd asked about his dissertation timeline, and impossible, improbable, inconceivable, just like everything else about Adam and Olive. Oh God, what if they'd really met years ago? He probably didn't remember anyway. Surely. Olive had been no one. Still was no one. She thought about asking him, but why? He had no idea that a 5-minute conversation with him had been the exact push Olive needed. That she'd thought about him for years. Olive remembered her last words to him. Maybe I'll see you next year. And oh, if only she'd known. She felt a surge of something warm and soft in the squishy part of herself that she guarded most carefully. She looked at Adam, and it swelled even larger, even stronger, even hotter. You, she thought.
You.
You are just the most, the worst, the best. Olive laughed, shaking her head. What? He asked, puzzled. Nothing. She grinned at him. Nothing. Hey, you know what? You and I should go get coffee. To celebrate. Celebrate what? Everything. Your grant. My year at Harvard. How great our fake dating is going. It was probably unfair of her to ask, since they were not due for fake dating coffee until tomorrow. But the previous Wednesday had lasted just a few short minutes, and since Friday night, there had been about 30 times when Olive had to forcibly remove her phone from her hands to avoid texting him things he couldn't possibly care about. He didn't need to know that he was right, and the problem with her Western blot had been the antibody. There was no way he'd have answered her if on Saturday at 10 p.m., when she'd been dying to know if he was in his office, she had sent that "Hey, what are you up to?" message that she'd written and deleted twice. And she was glad she'd ended up chickening out of forwarding him that Onion article on sun safety tips. It was probably unfair of her to ask, and yet today was a momentous day, and she found herself wanting to celebrate. With him. He bit the inside of his cheek, looking pensive. Would it be actual coffee or chamomile tea? Depends. Will you go all moody on me? I will if you get pumpkin stuff. She rolled her eyes. You have no taste. Her phone pinged with a reminder. Oh, we should go to Flacella, too. Before coffee. A vertical line appeared between his brows. I'm afraid to ask what that is. Flacella, Olive repeated, though it was clearly not helpful, judging from how the line bisecting his forehead deepened. Mass flu vaccination for faculty, staff, and students. At no charge. Adam made a face. It's called Flacella? Yep, like the festival. Coachella. Adam was clearly not familiar. Don't you get university emails about this stuff? There've been at least 5. I have a great spam filter. Olive frowned. Does it block Stanford emails too? Because it shouldn't. It might end up filtering out important messages from admin and students and... Adam arched one eyebrow.
Oh.
Right. Don't laugh.
Don't laugh.
He doesn't need to know how much he makes you laugh. Well, we should go get our flu shots. I'm good. You got one already?
No.
I'm pretty sure it's mandatory for everyone. The set of Adam's shoulders clearly broadcasted that he was, in fact, not everyone. I never get sick. I doubt it. You shouldn't. Hey, the flu is more serious than you might think. It's not that bad. It is, especially for people like you. Like me? You know, people of a certain age. His mouth twitched as he turned into the campus parking lot. You smartass. Come on. She leaned forward, poking his biceps with her index finger. They had touched so much at this point, in public and alone and a mixture of the two. It didn't feel weird. It felt good and natural, like when Olive was with On or Malcolm. Let's go together. He didn't budge, parallel parking in a spot that would have taken Olive about 2 hours of maneuvering to fit into. I don't have time. You just agreed to go get coffee. You must have some time. He finished parking in less than a minute and pressed his lips together, not answering her. Why don't you want to get the shot? She studied him suspiciously. Are you some kind of anti-vaxxer? Oh, if looks could kill. Okay. She furrowed her brow. Then why? It's not worth the hassle. Was he fidgeting a little? Was he biting the inside of his lip? It literally takes 10 minutes. She reached for him, tugging at the sleeve of his shirt. You get there, they scan your university badge. They give you the shot. She felt his muscles tense under her fingertips as she said the last word. Easy peasy, and the best part is, you don't get the flu for a whole year. Totally, oh. Olive covered her mouth with her hand. What? Oh my God. What? Are you? Oh, Adam. What? Are you afraid of needles? He went still, completely immobile. He wasn't breathing anymore. I'm not afraid of needles. It's okay, she said, making her tone as reassuring as possible. I know, since I'm not. This is a safe space for you and your fear of needles. There is no fear of. I get it, needles are scary. It's not. You are allowed to be scared. I am not, he told her a little too forcefully, and then turned away, clearing his throat and scratching the side of his neck. Olive pressed her lips together, and then said, Well, I used to be scared. He looked at her, curious, so she continued. As a child. She had to clear her throat. My mother would have to hold me in a bear hug every time I needed a shot, or I'd thrash around too much. And she had to bribe me with ice cream, but the problem was that I wanted it immediately after my shot. She laughed. So she'd buy an ice cream sandwich before the doctor's appointment, and by the time I was ready to eat, it'd be all melted in her purse and make a huge mess and… Damn it. She was weepy again. In front of Adam again. She sounds lovely, Adam said. She was. And to be clear, I'm not afraid of needles, he repeated. This time his tone was warm and kind. They just feel disgusting. She sniffled and looked up at him. The temptation to hug him was almost irresistible. But she'd already done that today, so she made do with patting him on the arm. Ah. He pinned her with a withering look. Don't awe me. Adorable. He was adorable. No, really, they're gross. Stuff pokes at you, and then you bleed. The feeling of it, yikes. She got out of the car and waited for him to do the same. When he joined her, she smiled at him reassuringly. I get it. You do. He didn't seem convinced. Yep. They're horrible. He was still a little distrustful. They are. And scary. She wrapped her hand around his elbow and began to pull him in the direction of the flotilla tent. Still, you need to get over it. For science. I'm taking you to get a flu shot. This is non-negotiable. I'll hold your hand during. I don't need you to hold my hand, since I'm not going. Except that he was going. He could have planted his feet and stood his ground, and he would have turned into an immovable object. Olive would have had no way of dragging him anywhere. And yet, she let her hand slide down to his wrist and looked up at him. You so are. Please. He looked pained. Don't make me. He was so adorable. It's for your own good. And for the good of the elderly people who might come in any proximity to you. Even more elderly than you, that is. He sighed, defeated. Olive, come on. Maybe we're lucky, and the chair will spot us. And I'll buy you an ice cream sandwich afterward. Will I be paying for this ice cream sandwich? He sounded resigned now. Likely. Actually, scratch that. You probably don't like ice cream anyway because you don't enjoy anything that's good in life. She kept on walking, pensively chewing on her lower lip. Maybe the cafeteria has some raw broccoli? I don't deserve this verbal abuse on top of the flu shot. She beamed. You're such a trooper. Even though the big bad needle is out to get you. You are a smartass. And yet, he didn't resist when she continued to pull him behind her.